It is 11 a.m. I think we're just going to go ahead and get started. Hello there, my name is Quentin Russell. I am the engagement specialist here at Doc365. And today we're going to be taking a look at how a contract management system can help organizations in 2022. That said, let's take a look at today's agenda. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, what we do. That way you can know that we do know a little bit about what we're talking about. After that, we'll take a look at some common contract management issues. And then we'll take a look at how poor contract management harms businesses. And then I do apologize for the issue with the agenda, but the last part that we're going to take a look at is how a contract management system can help organizations solve common problems. After that, we'll do a question and answer session where I will go over any questions that people might have posted in the chat throughout the webinar. And then what we'll do is I'll cover those. And if there's anything I can't cover, I will send an email later today with the details of those questions and the answers to them. With that said, let's just jump into today's webinar. So a little bit about who we are. So we're Doc365. We're a company located in Jacksonville, Florida, and we have over 18 years of experience working with SharePoint to deliver exceptional productivity solutions. We've worked with a wide range of companies in a variety of industries to implement a diverse array of SharePoint productivity tools, and these include internet portals, contract management systems, CRM solutions, and more. If you're interested in taking a look at any of those, you can sign up for a free demo on our website, mydoc365.com. Just click the free demo button in the top right corner. There you'll be able to fill out the form. You'll be able to select either a 30 to 45-minute demo with one of our representatives, and I'm sure we'd love to take that time to explore how our organization and any of our systems might be able to help you. That said, let's jump into the webinar today. So, when it comes to common contract management issues, there's 5 that we've identified over the course of helping companies with their contract management processes. These 5 are limited contract visibility, slow contract turnaround time, contract non-compliance, a lack of contract standardization, and then unwanted expirations and renewals. So let's take a look at each of those. So first of all, limited contract visibility. So a recent report from Gartner found that many of their clients didn't know where all of their contracts were. Contracts can be stored in a lot of different places. They can end up in Outlook inboxes, share drives, or just physically in filing cabinets. This can make it a lot harder for organizations to actually locate all of their contracts when they're so spread out. And this can open up your organization to a wide array of risks due to not fully knowing the terms of the agreements you've entered into. You don't know what you need to be doing if you aren't sure of what you need to be doing. That's a really simplistic way of putting it. It seems like common sense, but a lot of organizations don't think about the fact that they need to keep everything visible. That if a contract isn't directly in front of people's faces, if it isn't reminding people of the terms contained within it, then people aren't just going to magically understand, adapt to, and adhere to the terms of said contract. It needs to be in front of their face. There needs to be something there guiding them and telling them to do so. Otherwise, your company is going to risk entering into non-compliance with that contract. Moving on from there to slow contract turnaround. Now, there are a lot of reasons that this can come up. This involves users not being able to find the right materials, red lines getting lost in email threads, approval bottlenecks in the legal department, and so much more. Basically, each company's contract management process is unique, which can lead to all sorts of different delays. Something that delays a software company might not necessarily delay a construction company and vice versa. It really depends on the work that you're doing, the services that you provide, and how you go about providing them. Now, for a lot of organizations, they don't really have a way to identify anything that's actually slowing down the process, because a lot of times their contract management process is rather informal. So they're just taking care of things as they're coming up. They're not recording anything. And so things get lost. You know, something where an approval can take, an approval from the legal department taking a week to get done. If that's not being actively reported on and recorded, it's not going to be followed. People aren't going to be able to identify that and fix that. The same thing goes for situations where a contract gets lost in someone's sendbox, or they fail to send on the next term, or anything like that. if you're not keeping track of that information, if you're not keeping track of where things are in the contract process, you're going to have major issues and you're not going to be able to identify what's slowing down the process. And that's the thing. You need to have information in order to make informed business decisions. And one of these is tracking where the contracts are, what's going on with them, and taking a look at all the steps that you can do to actually speed up the contract process. Moving on from there to contract noncompliance. Just as every organization is unique and has different things that slow down the process, so too do they have a differing array of complex regulatory hoops that they need to jump through in order to operate. There are certain commonalities. You have your employment laws, so how you're paying your employees, when you pay them, actually paying them for the services that they render, that sort of thing. You also have things like, non-compliant, like harassment and everything. It's pretty illegal to know about harassment going on in the workplace and tolerating it and abiding it. But beyond those like basic things, software companies have data compliance that they need to adhere to. Construction companies have more safety regulations that they need to adhere to. And so at every level, every organization needs to be making sure that they're using the correct regulatory language that pertains to their industry, the work that they do and how they do it, when they're generating their contracts, and whether or not they're actually adhering to those terms. Because organizations that fail to do this tend to open themselves up to becoming non-compliant. And non-compliance can lead to all sorts of expensive regulatory fines, fees, and legal costs that can add up in a huge way that can damage your organization's bottom line. Really, there's not much more to say about that. If you're not following the terms of your contracts, then you are probably not going to have a good time as an organization. Another big issue that a lot of companies face is a lack of contract standardization. And this is something that comes up more and more as a company grows. Like a small 5-person organization, only one person is drafting the contracts. That's not a big deal. But once you get 2, 3, 4, and even 5 people involved, and they're each drafting a contract, and they're not doing it with any sort of standardization, well, that's going to be a major issue. Basically, as you get to a point where you're seeing a wide usage of non-standardized ad hoc contracts, you're going to see a lot of bottlenecks start to pop up in different places in your organization, specifically whoever is responsible for reviewing the terms of your contracts, which is usually your legal department, or it might just be a sole person in lieu of having an actual legal department. Because they're going to have to go through each contract line by line to make sure everything's fine. And if they're trying to ensure that your organization is using standardized language, then they're going to have to take the time to translate those ad hoc contracts into more standard forms, which again slows down the process, adds a lot of redlining, and makes it so that a contract that should realistically only take a week to be generated, sent over, reviewed, signed, and executed, might take anywhere from like a month to 2 months, because it just takes that long, or it's sitting somewhere because someone isn't able to get to it in the right amount of time. And if you don't have anyone who actually does that, then this can lead to a lot of confusing contract terms, contradictory or outdated contract terms that basically just open up your organization to all sorts of compliance risks, because you're entering into a dozen different agreements with a dozen different types of language being used. And so you might run into situations where you've promised one thing here, you've promised another thing here, and how you're going to deliver that, and the way that services are, and your organization doesn't line up with either of them, or it only lines up with one of the two, but it can't line up with the other. Then the last big one that we see a lot from organizations that we work with is unwanted contract expirations and renewals. This can cause a major interruption for pretty much any business. So basically you can see something as simple as like unwanted software licensing being renewed automatically. So say for instance, like you have an Adobe subscription, you fail to meet the terms to cancel it so you don't contact them on the right date. Suddenly you have another year of an Adobe Photoshop subscription that your company touched once a year ago and has literally never touched since then. However, it can go all the way up to something as major as a contract expiring, but a company continuing to deliver the service within the contract without the protections that the contract contained. Like a good example of this is an organization that, say, for instance, a contract expires, but a company still continues to do work to the tune of about $1 million. Well, since the contract has expired, they're not able to bill that other company for $1 million worth of work. That is a huge opportunity cost. That's just, those are resources, that's time, that's effort that your organization is not getting back, and it's not getting compensation for that. So you suffered a huge loss there that might be very difficult to recover from. And so either of these situations and others like them are just major organizational issues, and they can cause a severe amount of damage to your bottom line. So with that said, these common contract management issues, how do they actually harm your business outside of what we've kind of already said? Well, there's 5 big ways that poor contract management harms businesses. So those issues aside, like we've kind of already touched on them. We've actually already touched on each of these a little bit, except for the first one. But essentially, these issues that come up in the contract management process can have a major damage that they do to your, like any organization, but especially organizations that aren't actually exhibiting any form of contract management, or rather poor contract management. So these are the 5 big points of damage, big pain points that arise due to poor contract management. And that is lax access controls, missed deadlines, breach of contract, fines and penalties, and scope creep. So the first one, lax access controls. In a proper contract management process, every employee should only have access to information that they need to know. Users have access to more than that. Giving them access to more than that opens the door to data being mishandled or potentially falling into the wrong hands. So, something as simple as the wrong date being put in, then accidentally changing something around, losing a document, all the way up to a bad faith employee taking important procedure documents, important contract terms, payment terms, and walking away with them to a competitor or a malicious third party. Basically, a poor contract management process leaves everything open to all users, or everything open to a lot of users, when it really shouldn't be. Not being able to control and track who has access to what contracts can cause major issues for your organization, because you just don't know what's going on. You need to be able to track everything that's going on in your system, who has access to what they're doing. That way you can make sure that there's no major data issues that might come up during the contract management process. From there, another big problem that poor contract management causes is missed deadlines. Most contracts have a defined end date. They also have expiration dates and deadlines. You have your deliverables, contract renewals. All of these are important dates to keep track of, and if you're not keeping track of them, you open yourself up to all sorts of issues. You could face supply chain interruptions from a vendor no longer supplying service because you missed a renewal on that. Or you're having to pay for services due to an automatic renewal that you're no longer using or are not interested in using anymore. You could also lose a customer due to not following up on the terms of the contract, not following up on a service, getting that renewed, and making sure that they're going to continue service with you. All of these can cause major issues and interruptions in your bottom line and the ongoing day-to-day activities that, while some of them might be minor, it's still time spent putting out fires when you could actually be developing your organization more and building it up in other ways. Moving on from that, another major problem is breach of contract. This can occur for a lot of reasons. I mean, the biggest one is mismanagement, but essentially this involves users like losing contracts, failing to track obligations, forgetting important dates, or forgetting key terms of the contract. Ultimately, we've already discussed what that looks like pretty much earlier in the webinar, but we haven't really discussed the effects of it, the fallout. If you're failing to meet the terms of your contracts, if you're running into multiple contract breaches, then this can destroy your business relationships and harm your reputation, because no one's going to want to enter into partnerships with you. This more pertains to your custom business partnerships, working with other organizations, working with your vendors and everything. But either way, they're just not going to want to work with you because you're going to have a reputation for not paying your bills, not delivering on what you need to deliver on, not doing your part. And so this is going to hurt your ability to do business in the future, earn more money, work with other organizations, but also it's just going to open you up to all sorts of regulatory fines, fees, and other issues where you're having to pay out a ton of money when it was a very avoidable issue because you should have just, recorded the deadline properly. Additionally, you're running into a situation where you're also not potentially tracking the other breach of contract. So if the other organization has failed to meet the terms of the contract, but you're not tracking that, then there's no way for you to ensure that you are getting the services that you have requested from that organization, or that they are adequately utilizing the services that you are providing. So it kind of goes both ways when it comes to this. It's not just tracking breach of contract on your end, but also on the other party's end, which kind of goes into our other point, which is, fines and penalties. Most every contract includes a detail that, says, hey, if you fail to adhere to the terms of this contract, you will have to pay X amount of fees or go through arbitration or do this. This is something as simple as the cessation of service, but it could also include large fines, penalties, and lawsuits. But like I said previously, this also goes both ways. Failing to track your contractor's obligations means you miss out on the opportunity to recoup your losses on a breach of contract by, imposing those sanctions that you have laid out within your contracts. Contract management isn't just about protecting yourself from, messing up, but it's also protecting yourself from other people messing up. It's making sure that you are getting everything that is owed to you and that you are delivering on everything that you owe. It's making sure that all of your finances are accurate, basically, and making sure that you're not doing too much or that the other person isn't delivering enough. Which kind of goes on to our last point, and the last big problem that a lot of companies that a lot comes up because of poor contract management, and that's scope creep. If you're failing to track the terms of the contract, it's going to grow over time because people are going to make requests. They're going to want to do extra. They're going to try to do more. And they're going to try to get more out of you because that's just kind of the nature of business. They want to get the most for their money. And so they're going to try to squeeze as many extra services, additional costs, whatever it is, from that contract. And so you tracking the terms of the contract, making sure that you have everything laid out, that everything is visible, means you can protect yourself from that because you can go to them and say, no, these are the terms of the contract. We don't need to pay more. No, we are not going to be adding this extra service, because the more you do that, the more it's going, a vendor asking you to pay more for something that is already laid out in the terms of the contract means that that's just hurting your bottom line and eating into your budget. But also a client asking you for more work eats into your opportunity and time budget, your ability to do other work and deliver on other services to other clients. But it's also impacting your ability to meet deadlines. The more you add to a project, the more that's due on the deadline. And so if you're not able to meet all of those terms, so say you've met the terms of the original contract by that deadline, but you have not met the latest terms, the updated version of it. Well, that was just an unnecessary risk, and now you've opened yourself up to missing that deadline. You are now non-compliant when you didn't have to be if you'd just been able to avoid scope creep. So with all of that said, how does a contract management system actually help organizations solve problems? Well, that is pretty simple. And rather than show you as part of a PowerPoint so that you're having to stare at your screen and zone out for longer, we're actually just going to go into a live environment, specifically our contract management system. So what you're seeing right here is the dashboard of our contract management system. And what it's designed to do is it's designed to give users visibility. It's designed to show them what they need to see. So for instance, our system by default shows users all of the contracts that they're working on that expire within 30, 60, and 90 days. And it also sends them email notifications letting them know that the contracts are going to expire within that time. Then instead of having to filter out and find that specific contract, they can actually just jump to a filtered list of all of the contracts that are going to expire in that time, so that they can take a look at them and examine them and find them a lot faster. Sure, it's only a couple button clicks, but those add up over the course of several months, years, and even decades, the longer you're using a system. But as well, the system is also here to help you track the different tasks that have been assigned out to you. So what you need to be doing. So there's no situation where it's like, okay, I'm going to open up this contract. What do I need to do on it? Instead, it said, you say, okay, I have this workflow approval pending. Here's what I need to do for this contract. Here's when I need to do it. Is it important? Is it not? Here's what I need to be doing. Additionally, it'll also send users email notifications of these tasks, so everyone can make sure that everything's visible, that it's up to date, and that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But even more than that, our system allows you to track custom metadata about each of your contracts, so that you can track all of the important details of your individual contracts. So for instance, if we go into a random contract here, like a management services agreement, well, here we can see what type of contract it is, what the notice to renew date is, how long we have to cancel it from the actual expiration date, when we need to review this. All of this is customizable. All of this is configurable so that you can find this information, have it be listed here, and then take actions in the system and track data based off of that managed metadata. One big thing that our system also does is it allows you to build contracts from pre-built contract templates. So to make sure that everyone's using the same regulatory language, to make sure that everyone's using the same contract templates, the same base, so you don't have to spend a lot of time reviewing each contract line by line, you just choose the contract template you want to use, fill out the information. So the only thing that's changing is the actual specific metadata that you need to capture. So we'll just fill this out real quick, and then we'll say it's effective on the 30th, expires on the 30th. So it's taking this data that we're putting in there and dropping it into a pre-built contract template so that all of your language is standardized. Your legal team doesn't have to review everything line by line. They just have to review the portions where the metadata is added. And because the contract templates are the same every time, they can know where they need to check that so they can save even more time from there. Now, going to a situation where potentially you might need to do something a little more custom with your contracts, but you still want to use pre-canned, pre-built language, well, our contract management system does have what we call a clause library. So 1 second, if we come back here and we open up a Word, just to make sure that we are sharing the right thing. If we come here, you can actually see, so if we, enter here, go into our clause library, you can add pre-built-in clauses where everything is formatted properly. You just need to, again, copy and paste and format it with the specific metadata. So for instance, right here, we just drop that into the document. And as you can see, it's already pre-built out everything. You just have to update this information. So that allows you to keep that standardized contract language. So again, whoever's having to review your contracts isn't having to spend a lot of time reviewing everything. They just have to review these specific points that have changed. And then with the system, so if we pull this back up, if we come back within the system, which I do apologize for that failure, and we open up any random contract, or we go back to the original contract that we're working on, if we come here under workflow, just to make sure that we're tracking each stage of it, so you can build out workflow templates where when a contract needs to be reviewed and sent around to the specific people in the organization, you're using these templates. So we'll create this real quick. It's populating each stage with whoever needs to review it at that stage. So, it goes to this person. So it goes to this person, and then once they've reviewed it, it'll go to this person, and so on and so forth. So we'll start this. It sends out the approval notification to Joe Joseph that they need to come in and review it. And then once they've signed off on it, made any comments, it's then sent off to the next person, so on and so forth. Now, the thing is, the system also archives this information. So that way you can track when someone's actually completed the task. Like if we come here under the history, you can see when it's been completed, who's updated it, when they've updated it, so that you can go back and track where any bottlenecks might be in that process. And because it's all here in the system, nothing's going to get lost in anyone's Outlook sandbox because it's all just stored here in Office 365, specifically your Office 365, because that's one thing that I really want to stress about this, is that we don't build this on like a separate server. We build this on your Office 365 environment. So you have full control over everything within here, but also you can know that it's stored safely within the cloud without you having to download it or anything, or users having to keep anything on their computers, which also to the point of user access and permissions. Like if you come here, you can actually manage what users have access to it, what they have access to, how they can access it, so that they have like read-only permissions, contribute-only permissions, and you can also restrict their ability to like download the document, save it, share it, copy any of the text within it. That way you can have full control over who has access to what, when they have access to it, and why they have access to it. Additionally, you can also list out, like using the obligation tab, you can list things out like, say for instance, any different like payments, milestones, deliverables in the contract that need to be delivered upon. And you can track that information, assign it out to a specific person so you can make sure it gets done. But even more than that, you can also create recurring and one-time notifications. That way you can make sure that if something needs to happen every month on the month, or every week on the week, you're tracking that, it's getting done, and it's getting assigned out to the right person. So that's just a brief overview of the contract management system. There's a lot more to it than this. And if you're interested in taking a deeper look at it, if you're interested in going more in depth on it, you can sign up for a free demo on our website at mydoc365.com. Just go up to free demo on the top right, fill out the form, and then from there you'll be able to get a 30 to 45-minute session where we'll go more in depth on it, cover how specifically we can configure this to help your organization. And yeah, so that's pretty much everything having to do with our contract management system. I will jump us back over to the PowerPoint. From the looks of it, I don't see any questions in chat, so I think we're just going to go ahead and wrap things up. Feel free to reach out to us at 904-309-9970, or you can reach out to us with any questions you might have over email at info@mydoc365.com. If you like what you do and you'd like to support us and help us out, you can also follow us on LinkedIn at Doc365. With that said, this has been how a contract management system can benefit your organization in 2022. This has been Quentin Russell. Thank you very much and have a great day.